Welcome to BWI Live. I'm Thomas Rankar. The crew is with us today for a very big weekend coming up. It's official visit weekend and Elite 11 all in the same 48-hour span, which is just the best. It's just perfect when things stack up like that. But it actually is a big day today as well. I want to start with this because I meant to talk about it yesterday, and I just I'm dumb. I forget things a lot of times. Today is the final day for Center Gives. So if you're in the Center County area or you love State College, you love the region, it's a great time to donate because there's a matching pool along with whatever you donate to the area for nonprofits and for people in the area for charity. There's I believe a $500,000 stretch pool. So between now and 8 p.m. So if you're listening to this live or if you're listening to this on replay before 8 p.m. on Thursday, you can go to centergives.org and you can donate. Wanted to mention it yesterday as well. It's a 2-day event here in State College, but everyone here has lived or lives in Center County, and I want to help us have this show give back to a place that we call home here in Happy Valley. So thank you for your time. Now I want to welcome our guests for today, the people that are going to make this engine run. Sean Fitz and Ryan Snyder, recruiting reporters for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Fitz, busy weekend ahead. What are you most looking forward to? What's the thing that you find most interesting this weekend?
I like live camps, and I know it's shorts and t-shirts, but live camps means there's football, at least somewhere on the horizon. So looking forward to the Elite 11, not looking forward to saying it live on camera, but looking forward to the Elite 11 on Sunday, which also features the All-22, which is something they've really helped that cause by bringing in some of the better players from the state, from the region, to come in and do a full camp basically, instead of just the quarterbacks throwing. It used to be just the quarterbacks throwing with some local receivers, and some of that worked, some of it didn't. But the guys that are coming in this weekend, they're going to put in a shift. We saw it last year, T. Frank. How many balls did Andrew Olish have to catch last year, and Lyric Samuel and those guys were they're gonna get their money's worth. I don't know how that breaks down, but they're going to get their money's worth in terms of reps from these top quarterbacks in the region and beyond. Yeah,
and they have offensive linemen. We've, like as you mentioned, Andrew Olish, Luke Reynolds have been at the one in State College in recent years. Leighton Von Brandt, another Penn State commit, I believe, was at one of the Elite 11 all 22 events. So it's a great time for us to see some of these guys up close and personal, and we'll be talking a little bit about that later in the show. Ryan Snyder's been tracking visits and official visits. We'll be getting into that, of course, as the meat of the show. But Ryan, how you doing today, man?
Good, I'm excited. I'm planning to be up there on Sunday too. Jasir and LeVar Keys should both be there. So it'll be fun because I
thought you said you were just going to cheer them on. Is what you got into there. But,
Jasir Rogers will be there. Yeah, but again, because Jasir, we didn't remember Sean. Remember he came to 707. We didn't know who he was. He was on a team that wasn't like a designated high school. Then all of a sudden we learned all this information. So really, obviously we watched his tape and all those things, but this will be my first time really watching him up close. And then, LeVar, we got to see at the Whiteout camp last year, but the way that's kind of structured and the groups he was in, he's like a mile over there that way. Yeah. So really getting up close. And that's the nice thing about these camps compared to, anything that's out on a college campus is we're way less restricted. And that's just NCAA rules. There's reasons why we have to be kind of restricted. But when we go to Penn State, that's not, Penn State doing that to the media. It is what it is. So really getting up close and seeing those guys, I think that's kind of something I'm looking forward to. Of course, Falzone and Hune too. That'll be big.
Yeah. So I want to start, Ryan, with you though in our general Penn State recruiting news, because it's not just the guys that are here this weekend. There's all kinds of other things setting up for official visits later. And of course, we haven't really got a chance to talk to you about Davion Brown and your conversation with him after he committed on Monday. So we're going to be starting there. But I want to start with your Inside Lash, which came out on Monday, which feels like it was 5 minutes ago. But this is a really good breakdown of the offensive line for 2026. And you laid it out, in a really comprehensive and easy to understand way. Obviously, people should go to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com to read the whole thing and to get all the intel that our subscribers get. But what was your biggest takeaway in all your reporting and kind of putting all those things together? What stands out to you about the class of 26 and where Phil Troutwine stands just the day before official visits happen this weekend, even though I don't believe there's an offensive lineman this weekend?
Yeah, I think we took Xavier Payne off the list. He was in and out, in and out. You know, he's been committed to Florida State, but I don't think he'll be here this weekend. Anyway, I would say to summarize it, right now, I think if you look through most of our official visit, you know, logs and stuff like that on the page, I think there's 16, 17, something like that. You know, offensive linemen who are planning to take an official visit to Penn State, and that's a big number. You got 2 committed already. I think 3 is the safe. 3 more, is the safe number. So probably around 5 or so. But when you see in 16 OVs and, you know, you only have spots for maybe 3, max 4, and that's if things really fell perfectly, how should fans look at that? So that was kind of the goal of like, okay, here's the 4 or 5 guys that I think are absolutely top of the board guys who are very genuinely interested in Penn State, right? So breaking down those kind of names. And then also, you know, these are the long shots. You can kind of, I'm not writing them off. You shouldn't write them off, but I don't see it really happening. And then, you know, kind of that middle tier of players who wouldn't shock me, but, you know, maybe there's 1 or 2 things that Penn State still needs to verify during, you know, this evaluation, or excuse me, I should say contact period now, you know, over the next 2 weeks or so. So I think the big takeaway is, you know, the guys at the top of the board are I think, players that fans should be familiar with right by now. Grayson McHugh, of course, is massively important. Carter Scruggs up there as well. You know, there's a few others. I don't want to go through all of them, but I think fans know, you know, Marlon Bright too. I'll say that one. I mean, that's one we talked about a lot. So, you know, there's I would say 4 or 5 guys, maybe 6 even, that like I realistically feel like there's a real chance, even especially if they get a green light or whatever it may be, that they could end up here to fill those final 3 spots. And then a handful of others that, you know, maybe if the OV goes great, you know, we'll have to be talking about them a little bit more.
Gotcha. Again, check that out, bluewhiteillustrated.com. Seeing as we're getting all these things out of the way, I always want to remind people that you can go get this information before we talk about it, because this show happens for an hour on Thursdays, but Ryan is working 24/7. He and Greg are always on.
Not lately.
So if you want to get that information, or if you just want to talk to people on the message board, subscribe right now for just $1, and you'll get that information for the first week for just $1. And then you can decide if you want to join us for a year and then build annually after that. One of the best values, if you are a Penn State football fan and you consider this your hobby, I mean, it's less than $150 a year to join us and get the most information you're going to get anywhere on the internet about Penn State football and recruiting, which we all know you're passionate about. If you're sitting here at 10 a.m. on a Thursday in May, you really like Penn State football. Luke Wafle released
Frank, can I talk offensive lineman for a second? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
I had one thing because it's going to fly out of my head if I don't. But you look back at the last several classes, and Michael Troutman, fairly out of nowhere, going back a little bit further, Egan Boyer, Venga, like these guys on that board come out of nowhere sometimes. And I think when you're looking at what Ryan wrote on Monday, there's a lot of names on there, and there's a lot of guys that you see the names and you're thinking of Drew Evers or something like that from Texas. You know, okay, he's from Texas. He's got some good offers. He's got some, you know, really good programs after him and everything like that. So like you kind of write him off, but we have seen, not just from a location standpoint, but also just from a timing standpoint, from sometimes a measurable standpoint. You look at Troutman, like we didn't expect Troutman because he's 6'2", 6'3".
I wrote him off.
They've been taking 6'6" guys to play guard and center. Like this is not something that fit within those parameters. But there's a bunch of guys on that list that would be surprises, but then you look back at it and be like, that kind of makes sense. So I just wanted to throw that out there with the offensive line, because it is a little bit more random, and it's a random position. It's a hard position to scout because you don't know how these guys are going to grow. You don't usually see how that mentality pops up on high school film because they're pushing guys around that are, no offense, you guys size. So it's really a hard ask to find, to get 5 guys and have 3 of them hit. So randomness is offensive line recruiting, and Penn State has cast its net so wide that you would hope that the randomness will catch up and they continue to produce like they have. Because look where they're at right now compared to where they were at 4 years ago. Unbelievable turnaround by Phil Troutwine. So I just wanted to speak my piece on that. I mean, it's just it's a remarkable job by them, and this is the way that he's gone about it.
His success is why that net is so wide too. Let's clarify. I mean, the interest that we're seeing from more Texas and Florida and scattered around, has a lot to do with Olu, going on to be a first-round draft pick, and just not just first-round picks, but just the overall bulk of it. Even going back to Boston College, I mean, there's 1 or 2 years here when he first got here during the pandemic that it wasn't going perfect, and that was just a tough time for everybody.
Yeah.
And aside from that, I mean, he's hitting what's his career, about 10 years now, probably hitting it like 7 out of 10 years, where it's been pretty damn good.
Yeah, and coaching in a spot like Boston College, where you're not at the bottom, but you're clearly not at the top, you have to find traits in guys, and you have to like lock into traits. And you've seen parallels over the years of guys that he's brought in that are similar to the guys that he's had success with. And I think that's every offensive line coach, but it's a little bit more magnified when we're looking at it from a couple of miles away, as opposed to just a nationwide type thing. That's why he's one of the best offensive line coaches in the country.
So I want to clarify 2 things here. First off, Ryan, do you think that there is now they've created an environment where they can be choosy in terms of who they want in this class? And, there's maybe the top guys, which are, kind of money related more than anything, but it seems like there are a lot of really quality names on the list here for Phil Trautwein, and he can, is there a pressure for these guys when they visit for their official visit, they should probably commit then, because that spot might not be available later?
I wouldn't say that yet, right? Because there's at least 3 spots. Like if they could hit at a high rate, they could take as many as 6 this year. They really could. Okay. So I wouldn't say that yet, but also talk to us bring that question up on June 15th. It might be a different story, if that makes sense.
Well, if you go to the visit tab page on blueillustrated.com, which is opening right now, there we go. You look at when some of these guys are coming in, and yes, you've got, I don't want to call it on purpose, but that first weekend, you're featuring Marlon Bright. He's going to announce, I think July 5th. Is that the date that we've got?
He's going to be committed well before then. Yeah.
Marky Walridge coming in. Grayson McHugh is going to come in early June. So like, those are the guys that I'm looking at that make a ton of sense for Penn State in one bucket. And then on the second, it's like, hey, bring these guys in, give them the chance to commit, and then filter out. Because I think we're going to still see some movement over those last 3 weekends of guys that are scheduled now that we don't expect right now, but guys that when we get to that point are not going to be on the schedule. So I think that's interesting. Another part that we're talking about here in the chat, Miami picked up Jackson Cantwell this week. I think you guys have seen the numbers and things like that thrown out. That's pretty crazy when you talk about $2 million for a high school offensive lineman, or whatever that number may be. It's a lot. Yeah, man, I'm not a huge fan of that approach, because these guys are going to take time to develop. And when you're paying that much, you want some sort of return. We talked about Jeremiah Smith the other day. That's a pretty good return for Ohio State, whatever they paid him, but right. Offensive lineman might take a little bit longer. So I'm very curious to see how that's going to go. Someone asked about Emmanuel Iheanacho in the chat. Steve put in a pick for Oregon this week. I think that's the right pick. I think that's one that makes a ton of sense for him, but I still think he's going to visit Penn State. I think he holds Penn State in really high regard. And we were talking about this on the board at Blue White Illustrated this week. You've got constants in that recruitment. Like that one has gone in waves, because there's a guy that was not on the radar at all. We ranked him number 3 overall in the first rankings in 2026, and then all of a sudden he blows up and gets interest from everywhere, and you just look at the kid and you offer him. That's kind of the way that he goes. But you've had several schools that have come and gone, a lot of SEC schools in and out, but Oregon and Penn State have been 2 fairly regulars in there. So I don't think he comes to Penn State. I think that's still a couple years away from Penn State being in a position to maybe try something like that because he's going to carry a hefty price tag as well as a 5-star kid.
Right.
But at the same time, I think there's definitely some genuine interest there. Likes Phil Trautwein, not far from home, likes the, his parents like the academic aspect of it all, but Oregon is tough to mess with.
So last thing I want to clarify here, I said I had 2 things I want to clarify. Second one is, I just want to be clear, Fitz, are you saying that you wouldn't be pancaked by Roseby Labintus on film? Like Ryan and I, sure, but are you saying that you wouldn't get run over by one of these offensive linemen?
No, I hit him with the
Oh, okay, got it.
I got a nice little rip swim that,
yeah, quick hands. He's got quick hands. He can disengage. Yeah. And I will say, Fitz has got the length. There's no doubt about that. Speaking of guys with length and quick hands, Luke Wafle, down to his top 4. I do believe he did announce a 5-team official visit schedule, though. So, guys, this is anyone who's watched the show is not surprised that Penn State is a part of this conversation. They're not surprised that Penn State is in this recruitment. So I guess what's your takeaway from all this of what he said? He talked to Steve Wiltfong earlier this week. Ryan, I guess I'll come to you. Actually, no, Fitz, I want to come to you on this one because I'm going to go to Ryan on something else next. How do you view anything specifics, any updates on the dates or anything like that you want to share here on the show about Luke Wafle?
The dates are all Ryan's because he's been sitting on those and waiting for the go-ahead for a long time. So I don't want to get him started on that. I still think Penn State's in a really good spot here, just based on location and Owen being here, and Owen not just being here, but being successful here. It sounds like he's going to maybe make his way into the back end of that defensive tackle rotation this fall. So that's kind of stuff that matters when you're talking about getting on campus and having, I don't want to say immediate success, but you can see the progress, tangible progress, as we say there. So I think Penn State's still in a good spot there. I mean, you're going up against some really, really top programs there. Texas and Ohio State, they've recruited as well as anybody. And
he looks like an Ohio State D end on film. I mean,
he does.
Yeah.
He does. He looks like the third Bosa brother or whatever. But no, he's got a lot going for him. But I do think that Penn State has a ton going for it as well. I don't want to call Penn State his leader, but I think that you can see kind of whenever he talks about Penn State that they've put in the effort to put themselves in a position to be there, if that makes sense. Now, official visits will still matter. The things at the end will still matter. Numbers will still matter, I'm sure. But there's a lot to like if you're Penn State right now. And suffice to say, they're probably feeling as good as anybody in this race. We'll just see how the next couple of months play out.
Ryan, I know you wrote the story, but I want to come to you about Davion Brown. But before we move on to that, anything you want to add to this about what Fitz just mentioned?
In my opinion, it is Texas, Ohio State, Penn State 1A, 1B, 1C. I would have USC 2 and Florida 3, if that makes sense. I still feel like Texas, Ohio State, Penn State are in the best spot. Here's the one thing I'll say is I don't look at Wafle and his family at all as like money being everything. But my one wonder here is if one of those schools just wants to put out a stupid number, it would make an easy decision. So that's where I'm just hesitant to like, don't get me wrong. I do think Penn State has most of the boxes checked, but in this era, and when you're going against Texas and Ohio State, all it takes is one of those schools to put out a dumb number and for things to like kind of shift there. So that's just the one thing that I kind of keep in the back of my mind as far as, really pushing Penn State as the absolute favorite. And you can do that with all these guys, really. But, when you become, you went from, what was he, Sean, a high 3-star to the 14th ranked guy in the country. You want to talk about value and those kind of things rocketing. That has now happened for Luke Wafle. So just keep that in mind.
Right.
Yeah. Today's show brought to you by our longtime sponsor here on the show. That is Andy Ludicky at My Perfect Franchise. If you're ready for the next stage in your life and you want to take what you have done, the skills you have attained, the knowledge you have acquired, and put it to use for somebody closer to you, as in you yourself, if you have business experience specifically, check out Andy at myperfectfranchise.net or give him a call at 404-973-9901. You can even talk to him on the Blue White Illustrated message board. We have a contest going on right now that's pinned to the top of the message board where you can both meet Andy, talk to him, learn a little bit more about a franchise, and win a subscription to On3 as part of the contest where you have to guess the franchise. What he does is he takes people through the franchise buying process. So if you've got the resources and the knowledge, he's going to put you in a franchise to manage that's going to help you be as successful as possible, put you in the best position to succeed and know what you're getting into. So if any of that applies to you, check Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Appreciate him being a part of the show and being a sponsor here. Also, very excited to add a new sponsor here for the summer, Hoppy Valley Brewers Fest 2025. From the people behind Anti-Fragile, we now have the Brewers Fest, which if you checked out, I believe it was last year, it was at Beaver Stadium. This year, you're going to have a tailgate party. So this is because of the construction going on at Beaver Stadium. They're going to be in Porter North, but it's going to be the same, if not better, with 75 brewers from Pennsylvania and beyond. They're going to have a whole lot of great stuff. Fitz, I usually come to you about beer. tell us a little bit more. July 29th, 2025 is when it is. But I know that you're a big fan of the Brewers Fest and all the things that they've been able to do in the short time they've been doing this.
You're typecasting me, but yes, you've heard of Happy Valley, you've heard of Hockey Valley. It is now Hoppy Valley, July 19th, 2025. This was the beer fest that they had in Beaver Stadium last May. Beaver Stadium's a little bit busy right now with the construction, so they had to move it out to the Porter North lot, which is attached to Medler, right outside of the baseball stadium. There's over 75 breweries from Pennsylvania and beyond, exclusive beers, opportunities to chat with the brewers, live music, local vendors. The atmosphere is great. A lot of people went last year, really enjoyed themselves. I'm sure, even though it's outside the stadium, that the atmosphere will be no different. There's VIP and general admission tickets available now. I believe it's American Craft Beer Week, so there's also a $10 off code floating out there around there somewhere. But it's a great event, man. It's after Arts Fest, but it gives you an opportunity to come into State College on kind of a down weekend and try some things out, which I don't know how many people I've talked to that say they just like to come up and experience just the town, because the town is a special town. I know you've dealt with the Chamber of Commerce and everything, but State College as an entity is pretty cool in the summer. I noticed that yesterday when I was driving around, and there were very few cars on the road. It was really great. But the Hoppy Valley Brewers Fest in July, I'm really looking forward to it. You can check out the local stuff. You can check out the stuff that you're not able to get wherever you're at. And I can't wait to see the list of brewers, because last year was really good, and I expect them to continue to turn that up. So very excited that they're advertising with us, and also very excited for beer, because that's what we do.
Yeah. I always say it's from my perspective, coming from literally a dirt road where I grew up, it is small town vibes with city-like amenities in the summer. Like, I don't know how you get better than big trees, shade, sun, and your favorite places that you love and remember from coming here to college or coming for game days. And you can just walk in and have a drink, grab something to eat, go shopping. And of course, if you're coming for the Brew Fest, you can go and check out all the great vendors that they have. I was talking to some of the people behind this. They've got vendors from as far away as Vermont and Maine. And a lot of these people are Penn State fans and Penn State alumni that have ties to this is going to be like a very Penn State centric event. So again, one last time, VIP and early admissions is 3 to 8 p.m. General admissions is at 4. So if you want that VIP experience, you want that kind of, I can get in and I can go around and try all my favorite beers, all my favorite places first. You can get those VIP tickets right now. Again, it's going to be a tailgate party in the Porter North lot, which is right attached to Medler Field. So you're going to have all the amenities of going to the bathroom inside, having all the great places that you can check out. It's going to be a really nice event. So check out hoppyvalleybrewfest.com.
If you frequent Brewfest, you know that going to the bathroom inside, a huge perk. Definitely an amenity there. And for that VIP ticket, usually those brewers will bring a small batch of something that they're probably not serving to everyone. So definitely, if you're a beer person, it makes a lot of sense. So check them out. They support us. We support them. hoppyvalleybrewersfest.com.
All right, Ryan, I said I wanted to come to you about Davion Brown. You had a chance to talk to him about why he chose Penn State and why he chose to do it before his official visit. So what'd you learn? What was the story with Davion Brown?
He's been leading that way for a little longer than we expected, right? Sean and I have joked about this on the message board a couple times now, but in early February, he reaches out to me and, basically is looking to get a graphic, and he sends me his top 4 schools, and I'm totally expecting Penn State to be one of them. And Penn State was not one of them. And I'm like, okay, total shocker on that one. That's strange. Next day, reaches back out. Oh, actually, I'm going to make it 5 and then add Penn State, which how many times have we seen that over the years, Sean? You're like, well, if Penn State wasn't in there in the first place, are they really in it?
I wonder if you fell for like a pseudo Josh Kando, where he was like, I'm going to get this guy. And
I kind of back around,
and I'm not going to include this team on my list, but they're number 1. Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. So, I've had that in the back of my mind for, I don't know, it's 2 months now. Right. But I think if you look at how the cards have fallen, how important Davion was for Penn State, obviously Messiah Hampton, things are fading there. I don't feel like Travis Johnson's going in their direction. Connor Salmon is committed to Clemson. Like, it makes a lot of sense that, Penn State, 1, had to crank up the pressure. And then also 2, when you look at Davion's schools, Georgia was in the mix, Duke. yeah, how hard was maybe Georgia pushing for him? I don't know that answer, but they do have
he had an OV set up. I think that they took another receiver earlier this week too. So
right,
I mean, it would have been a surprise to get there, but that's just my.
I agree. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So yeah, when I'm just Michigan was kind of in the mix, but not really. Didn't have an OV set. Like it makes a lot of sense now when you look at just again how important he is to Penn State and the way things were trending. That he would end up here now. A couple months after that, and things always change in recruiting. Let's not pretend that they don't. In my opinion, this was really put into motion when he visited for right before the blue-white game. He was normally supposed to come Friday, Saturday. He had to move it up for some family stuff. So Thursday, Friday of that weekend, basically said he left there thinking about it a lot and, just wasn't sure if he was quite ready. And then Higgins and Poindexter came down to a school. I forget I want to say May 6th. I have it in the story there. I want to say May 6th was the date. And, have a good off-campus kind of conversation, and that's really how this snowballed into where it was here a couple of days ago with the commitment. So I think for Penn State it's massive because just the way I was looking at where wide receiver was trending, Brian Williams is in the mix there. Obviously Hayden Moore, I believe his last name is. They've extended a few offers there, and whenever you see schools extending a few offers, you already have a couple guys committed. Like it just behind the scenes, it kind of lends you to believe that they're not trending in the right direction. So to get one of those top 3-4 guys that we really had circled in Virginia, really important, I think.
How do you feel about well, I guess I'll just say this. I was watching some of his film yesterday, and I'm super interested.
Is there some Matthew Otten in this kid?
Yeah, for sure. He's not as big as Matthew Otten, but he might be a little bit angrier when he runs in terms of the violence, and he lowers his shoulder on guys. I don't think he's a running back, but he's a guy that for a receiver has elite tackle breaking skills.
So I talked to his coach, and it was funny. It was actually his defensive coordinator. We'll have this story up here soon. And his coach was raving about him as a running back. And so that's kind of what was interesting to me. He just felt like vision wise and things like that. Like obviously body type, so it's a little different. But like he was just saying, if his body type was a little bit different, like he actually kind of felt like a running back would maybe be just from a vision perspective and the way he's able to read and his aggressiveness and things fit him well. So I think Penn State's very happy to have that kind of mindset though at a wide receiver position. And obviously that they're happy to have him on board. So we'll see where things
Fitz,
go. But
that's what you can check out the video we did from Tuesday here on the YouTube channel. Fitz, that was kind of your highlight was his vision and his way he sets up blocks as a receiver.
Yeah, I have him the exact same size as Matthew Otten. I think Otten's got maybe his arms are a little bit longer, but they're both close to 6'1", 205. And
Matthew's a little thicker though, right? I feel like
I think they're both thicker. Like I was thinking about this earlier, because we always try to find comps from Penn State's recent past, right? Of receivers that kind of fit that mold. And last year when we were talking about Otten, it was tough to find somebody. I mean, we had to go to like Parker Washington for like the build, not so much the route running and everything like that. But, Parker's a little bit shorter, but in terms of being a running back that plays receiver, Matthew Otten kind of fit that bill. So I'm looking at Davion Brown, and I said this on the show earlier this week, is kind of like a combination of Otten and Kobe Howard, which Kobe Howard lit the world on fire with TikTok video yesterday. But
I didn't see that.
Like,
go on.
It's after, like, so much of it is after the catch. Now, as we've seen with Otten since he got here, he's got to work on the stuff before the catch to make the catch so that he can get the ball in his hands. But you've got an opportunity to sort of have a different style of receiver. I mean, a lot of those guys, especially like in that 2022 class, a lot of those guys were not carbon copies of each other, but very similar with Tyler Johnson and Anthony Ivey, maybe Christian Driver to an extent as well, like kind of very similar bodies, very similar. I don't want to say similar prospects, but similar bodies. Now you've got a different style of body. And I'm curious how that works with T. Frank. I know you've been adamant about getting not adamant, but you've been curious about getting the receivers involved in the run game. And these are receivers that can be involved in the run game, I feel.
Yeah, and that's part of Andy Kotelnicki's offense is just kind of the motions and the stretching of the defense, the stressing of the defense laterally. And if you can do that with not just the running backs in the backfield, but also guys in jet sweeps and motions like that, you're building a profile of these guys that have that ability. Watching some of this full game film yesterday, the receiver in kind of a Matt Otten sense with more of he's run more routes. Right. He plays receiver, but the majority of his diet are screens, and then a wide receiver bubbles, and a couple of like short routes, a lot of like out routes, arrow routes. He doesn't run a lot of stuff down the field, but when he does, I think it looks good. He's got that route running chops that you mentioned with like the Kobe Howard comp. I think he's got the potential to do that, but there's still a lot that needs to flesh out there. And then the short arms, smaller hands, maybe doesn't have the contested catch or vertical ability to have like, you know, anywhere you throw it near him, he's going to catch it. There are some of those things where he sees a lot of bad passes. He doesn't bring them in. I don't blame him for that, but it does kind of bring up the question just in terms of an incomplete. Does he have that sort of, because he's a big bodied guy, does he have that contested catch ability, or is he going to be more of a separator and speed guy with that size? It doesn't matter right now, but the physicality, the mentality, that's what Marcus Hagan's talked about this spring, of guys that he wants guys that will play and tackle on concrete. And I got the sense of that from him, from Davion Brown. That's a guy who would be willing to do that. And again, I wouldn't want to play on concrete. I'm not a Penn State wide receiver. I like my skin where it is on my body. Official visits coming up this weekend. Next half of the show, we're going to be previewing what's coming up the next couple of days. So let's get into it. It's a big weekend with a lot of players at the top of their positions across the Penn State big board. Everyone is focusing on the name and the picture that I think signifies this particular weekend. Joey O'Brien, the LaSalle safety / wide receiver. Guys, let's just start the bidding with Joey O'Brien in terms of the importance of this visit. Last best opportunity for an impression. Ryan, what do you think of this weekend for Joey O'Brien and the Nittany Lions?
I don't like it being May 15th. I'll be very honest with you. I feel there is a lot of, they're not the same player, but I feel like personality wise, there's a lot of Brandon Finney in Joey O'Brien from the perspective of every visit's the best visit, and you know who gets last might be the one who ultimately signs him. And now look, Brandon Finney's was a little different too, because his dad kind of was way more onto Oregon and kind of kept Brandon from coming back to Penn State. And Penn State thought if they could get him back on campus, which they did one time when he came with his mom, but didn't return when they really wanted him to, that could have been the reason. And to me, there feels like there's some of that with Joey O'Brien. So look, I think Penn State will probably end up being a top 2-3, a school that at the very end, he genuinely considers. I do believe that, but I also think if he's going to make a commitment in early July, mid-July, we're talking 2 months from now. That's a long way off from this visit.
And there's not anything this weekend that could make him just pull the cord now and not.
I don't see why he would. Sean, would you agree? Like, if he was going to pull early commit to Penn State, I feel like that would happen by now.
Yeah, probably. I think just the way that he's gone through the process so far, and he came out of Notre Dame with some picks, and then came to Penn State, and we thought Penn State led, and then he went back to Oregon, and maybe Oregon leads. Now, I think those three are the three that kind of had the most attention, but also he loved Clemson, he loved Tennessee, he loves everywhere he goes, and that's not a detractor or anything like that. I think he genuinely loves it, and I said it earlier this week that he's going to have a hard time saying no to a lot of schools, a lot of coaches that he's developed relationships with. And that's not a character flaw at all. That is him being genuine. And I appreciate that. The only problem that I'll say, and repeat what Ryan said, that the first official visit, is it going to, I'm sure it'll set the bar and I'm sure he'll have a wonderful time, but he's committed to taking those other visits. Like, he wants to take those visits. Penn State was hoping to change those dates around and did not work out because some other schools kind of got back at him and was like, hey, you locked in these dates with us, so we want you to still come to this date. He's okay, we can do that. So suffice to say that Penn State getting him on campus early can have some positive effects, but also there's a real downside to it. So I'm very curious to see how this one plays out over the next couple of months. But yeah, Notre Dame, I think, is in line to get the last visit right now. I think Oregon is very prominent in this recruitment as well. And somebody said in the chat, pay the kid. I think Penn State would. Like, I think you look at Penn State extending themselves for certain prospects. They are doing very well in Pennsylvania right now. And that hasn't been the case for a couple of years now. I mean, 7 commitments right now, I believe, from Pennsylvania, and they want the top one, which is Joey Bryan. Kevin Brown's probably got something to say
Grayson
about that.
McHugh. Yeah, it'll be 1-2 with Kevin and Joey, no doubt.
Yeah, but number one carries a lot of clout. So Joey O'Brien, very, very important.
They have a streak going at number one too. Sorry to cut you off. Like, I mean, it's like been what 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah.
And then you have next year you have Keemon Spell already committed.
Right.
Keemon's two. Right. Khalil Taylor
next year, and then Khalil Taylor are both 2027 guys that are 1-2. I think I assume they're 1-2 in Pennsylvania. I haven't looked at the very early rankings in 2027, but yeah, I mean they are committed to being great in Pennsylvania, and Joey O'Brien, huge piece of that.
It's just a streak. It's just a number. Like, it's just a talking point. But like, if you think James doesn't care about that, I would.
But even someone on the board said, if they miss him, it's the biggest miss in decades or whatever. And I went through, okay, well, missing Julian Fleming hurt, missing Nolan Rucci hurt, missing Anai White, who was number 2, not number 1, but like the top player in Pennsylvania.
Missing Marvin Harrison hurt. Let's be honest.
I mean, yeah. We don't.
I know.
You talk about guys. Some guys, Marvin Harrison kind of bucks the trend of guys that go out of state and then have a ton of success. Like that's not that hasn't been the case for a lot of guys that Penn State's missed on.
Just to follow up, Keemon Spell, 11th overall player in the class of 2027, number 1 running back, number 1 in the state. Khalil Taylor, 50, and then number 2 in the state. He's the 7th receiver in 2027. So you guys were dead on with all of those speculations off the top of your head. As always, excellent work.
That is some good hosting right there, making us look good. I appreciate that.
Who do you want to go to next as we run down the list of some of these top players at their positions and some of these national players that are visiting this week? Ryan, I'll come back to you. Take us down the road where you want us to go.
It has to be Kari Adams and Dorian Barney. I think you have to throw them both together because in my eyes, they've been, if they're not 1-2, they're certainly both top 4-ish, top 5. And I think that's even probably further off as far as how Terry Smith is recruiting his top cornerback targets. There's others in the mix, don't get me wrong, but the aggression that he has shown with Dorian Barney, Sean, you talked about, there's some Elliott Washington similarities there. I think that's a valid point. And then Kari Adams is a player who, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, we thought Penn State was certainly, if not the leader, like absolutely top 2-ish. And then his recruitment just absolutely takes off, and he doubles his offers basically. And not only that, but the back half of his offers have been the best of the best, the elite of the elite. So it's very interesting that I think Penn State will absolutely be, again, similar to Joey O'Brien, a school that, both of those players have like top 3-ish, certainly that they think very hard about. Can they get both? Man, it would be a hell of a pull for Terry Smith to get both of them. I think I think it'd be very important. And knowing how good of a recruiter Terry is, I feel like he should be able to get one of them. He's a damn good recruiter, and he hasn't had that big win as far as a cornerback yet in this class.
Fitz, what do you think about the situation? And what Ryan just said there, I think, is interesting in terms of there is this disconnect between Terry Smith is putting guys in the NFL. He can bring guys in from the transfer portal who maybe were top targets and then make them top corners at Penn State. But there is this disconnect between that and actually getting them out of high school, developing them and sending them to the league. I'm not saying that is in any way Terry Smith's fault, but how do you couch that with these two guys and this particular class?
I mean, first off, I think you put these guys in different categories. Dorian Barney, yes, he's from Erie, but he moved down there, I think in 2021 to Georgia. So he's essentially a Georgia kid. I mean, it's you spend 4 or 5 years there, you're pretty much converted then to a Georgia kid. So like I kind of don't have them as regional guys. Kari Adams, I think, is just a step above in terms of everything that he brings to the table. You look at what Penn State has been successful with, and you look at the guys that Penn State has sort of locked in on, and personality-wise, physical traits, all that kind of stuff fits him really well. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Adams' top 3 is very similar to, or I don't even know if he has a top 3, but very similar to Joey O'Brien in that Notre Dame's right there, Oregon's right there. I mean, those are the schools, number one, if you're Penn State, you want to compete with because, hey, pretty good programs right there. But I think that really makes sense as a top of the board guy. We kind of put Brandon Arrington in another category earlier this week because yes, Penn State made a tremendous impression on him. I think his coach said he liked it a lot more than he thought he would, which is a good compliment, maybe a bit backhanded, but a good compliment.
Right.
And so Terry Smith is going to get someone. He always does. Like that's kind of what I keep falling back onto. But Kari Adams today, and we talked about Luke Wafle with this 20 minutes ago. Kari Adams today, carries a bit more clout in terms of negotiation power with his offer list, with his ranking and all that kind of stuff. So these are top of the class type guys and will determine Penn State's ceiling for a potential top 10 class in 2026. So
yeah,
I think that is what I keep going back to is like, hey, you miss on Dorian Barney and Texas A&M's heavy in there. And I think Georgia Tech's in there as well. Okay, that's fine. Like you have an opportunity to maybe turn his head or whatever, but he's still a Georgia kid. You miss on Kari Adams. That's a big hole. That's how many Brandon Finney comparisons have we made so far? Just to Joey O'Brien. So we'll throw it out there with Kari Adams as well. I mean, those are the ones that you kind of go back on and say, man, you wish you could have locked that one down, because not just perception, but also on the field, that stuff matters too.
I want to come back to our seeker saying pay the kid, talking about I think it was Luke Wafle, but it was Joey O'Brien. Joey O'Brien, Luke Wafle, Kari Adams,
Carter Meadows. Like, you already have Kevin Brown in the class. I don't want to go too far with this, but there's a lot of guys that you could say just pay the kid because this guy is one of the best at his position and has obvious translatable skills and traits. And I don't think there's much of a projection with a guy like Luke Wafle. I don't have any problems with any of the things he does on film. That it's the high floor, higher ceiling sort of guy. At some point, you got to make some decisions here because you're not Oregon. I'm sorry, T-Frank. I thought you were done there. The one thing I'll say, I was talking to a source kind of about this the other day about how aggressive can you be for some of these guys, and obviously they're going to be aggressive, right? But just keep in mind, Penn State retained a lot of talent, and a lot of money had to go into retaining that talent. So this is the gift and the curse of what's about to be the salary cap era, where there's a lot of talent out here right now. But to keep Drew Aller and to keep Nick Singleton and some of those guys, a lot of that money is also tied up. So I'm not trying to downplay what they could do for some of these guys, but they're only going to be able to seriously pay some of these freshmen. There's if you look at the board right now, there's 5, 6 of them. That's why Manu Iheanacho, I just throw him aside. I don't think that that's ever going to happen right now because of the stupid money that it is and the position that he plays. And as Sean said, the development that it takes. There are some other guys that it makes a little bit more sense, but just remember that there's a lot of money tied up in this roster at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes and no, because those guys are going to be gone when the 2026 class comes in. So
correct.
Does that open some things up? Yes. But also you need to retain next year's group of guys that could go to the draft.
All these guys are getting paid now though, man.
Yeah.
Depending on the state,
I agree with that. And I'm just saying that it's not a one-to-one apples to apples type thing because you've got opportunities to sort of fill in the gaps, and rev sharing is going to be big in terms of, I would say, setting the floor. If that makes sense, because it's not so much, the rev sharing is not so much about Joey O'Brien and Kari Adams and Luke Wafle. It's about, if you're going to take 27 guys, that does it for 14 or 15 of them, that figures to be your kind of floor for everything. So I think that's really how you go about it. And again, in-state matters, position matters, ability to play right away. I think you probably don't say it, but it matters. You've got an opportunity for those guys to come in and compete and play. And as you said with Luke Wafle, it only takes one school to dwarf every others. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now with the waiting for the rev share stuff is, how aggressive are you right now? Because we saw at the end of the cycle last year, Penn State made a push for Quincy Porter, Andrew Olish, Brendan Finney, all those guys that missed on the first time around. Now you end up getting Olish, and it's pretty much it off of memory. But how aggressive are you going to be in the summer? Or I guess it's still late spring right now. How aggressive are you going to be right now, knowing that Oregon has more money than you? Knowing that a lot of these schools or some of these schools have the ability to up it at not the blink of an eye, but
pretty soon after that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's Ryan, how many times do we see a kid put out a top 5 and then all of a sudden an offer comes through where Florida offers, like a big school comes through and offers because, they might not have been in the race, but then they look at that and say, well, we didn't think we had a shot. So, we're going to offer you. And now all of a sudden you're the sixth school. You're the Davion Brown fifth school or whatever.
Look at Luke Wafle right now. That's a great example, right? USC is the same way. Like, it was Ohio State, Penn State, Texas for a very long time, and then all of a sudden he takes a couple of these visits, and now that's
more out of region than anything. Like, you can do that for, like, if Penn State was trying to do that with a Texas kid, that would make more sense than with a kid from Philly. Right. That's another comparison that's not equal, but it makes a lot of sense to ride the brakes as long as you can, and then sprint at the end.
Z-Man says, how much? And I'm assuming he's asking how much are these numbers that we're talking about. That's the point. Nobody knows.
Hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars for sure. And then it's all kind of, Ryan, you've said this before, of like a lot of times these deals are not real. Like sometimes players are coming to you with deals.
Well, that's changing now, though. But that's changing now. That's the whole point of the salary cap and what Deloitte's going to be doing. That was certainly the case more so in the beginning. Now schools that are doing that are paying the price on the back end. So like USC, like that massive outgoing of talent that USC just had, Kyron Hudson, for example, that was a big part of that. That was a massive part because they made some promises, didn't keep them, and players stayed loyal for a year or two, thinking that promise was going to come, and it didn't come. And now they got Chad Bowden there, who's one of the best GMs, and like they're changing the way that they go about things, and that's why I think USC will actually get their shit together here soon. But anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, some of the other guys here on the list, because we got to get to the Elite 11 preview. So who are the other guys that you think are important to talk about next in the hierarchy of visitors this weekend, Fitz?
Brian Williams is coming in this weekend. We talked about Davion Brown a little bit earlier. Penn State still looking at wide receivers. They've got 3 in the class, and I think they're comfortable with 3. But you continue to look at those guys. Brian Williams hasn't been on campus, so get his measurements, get him around the coaching staff, and see if he's a potential fit there. From there, Cameron Hamill from Arizona, the cornerback, 4-star guy. Penn State is on a short list. Like, this is a guy that we haven't talked a lot about, but you look at his short list, and Oregon's there, and Ryan, you probably have
Nebraska, Texas A&M,
yeah. So 4 schools. I mean, we talked about that on the show last week. Like, there's a difference between having a top 10 at this point and having a top 4. Penn State definitely in there. We haven't heard a ton of interest there, but if he's coming in, he's definitely making the trip, not on his own dime, but he's definitely taking the time and taking the weekend to show that kind of interest. So those 2 guys are kind of outer region guys that make.
I think he makes a lot of sense from a defensive perspective. I don't want to be too obvious about this, but he plays in the nickel. He's got highlights here, his interceptions, his off-ball anticipation. This is a dude that I think could play, pending his size and his measurables and the way he tackles here, he could play any position in the secondary. I think he could play corner, nickel, or safety. That is the kind of guy that this defense thrives on when you find a guy that has skills of both positions. He could be, Jordan Hancock for Ohio State last year. That could be him. He could be safety in this. So I didn't mean to just totally interject, but I was watching his highlights here, and he's the guy, even among Adams and Barney, his highlights make the most sense for Jim Knowles in my mind.
Good to know. You look at the recruitment last year of Darius Dixon, and if we did a show right before Darius Dixon visited, we probably spent 30 seconds just mentioning his name and saying he's a cornerback from California. That's probably all the attention that we paid to him, and then all of a sudden he was committed a couple of weeks later. So not writing any of these guys off, but it's just crazy things happen in official visit season. This kid has got a short list. Penn State's firmly on that short list. He hasn't been here to my knowledge, but if he's interested enough to come this weekend, then you can't write any of these guys off anymore.
Yeah, the one thing I often struggle with, especially like West Coast guys, is like just getting to know their personalities, because you don't have those relationships, and then it's just harder to even like just do interviews and stuff, right? They're way out on the West Coast. They want to talk at 8 o'clock at night. Well, shit, it's 11 o'clock back here. So
Ryan, you don't sleep. I don't know what the problem is.
I usually go to bed early, and then I'm up at like 4. But anyway, my point with that though is like Darius Dixon is the perfect example. Like, now that I've gotten to know Darius Dixon, I've talked to him, and I've talked like Alan Zamitis raved about Darius Dixon and just the character's personality. Like, now that we learn those things, it makes a lot of sense. We don't know that about Cameron. I don't know anything really about his character or personality, but it's just one of those things where, you know, that's why, or I think oftentimes that's why a couple guys fall in through the cracks and end up here. It's because of how well they fit. And just from a journalist perspective, I haven't been able to figure that out and get that out to the world. Maybe I got to do a better job now I talk about it. But, you know, it's that Dixon just fit that perfectly as far as like, oh, wow, now I totally get it.
I believe the last guy we have here on the list, Sincere Johnson, the linebacker.
Going to Ohio State next.
Okay. Perfect. Well, then the next.
We'll see. He's a Glenville guy, man. I can't get into it.
No, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew there was a reason when I asked, hey, who's next? And there was literally the last name we hadn't talked about. I assumed there was something.
I think Ginn's dad just did an interview with like Jim Tressel the other day. Did you see that anywhere, Sean? I don't know. They have like a podcast going.
We got a different For You tab, apparently. You've got Tressel. I've got, yeah.
Yeah. But no, I mean, listen, great player. Penn State would love to have him. I think they're top 3 or so. Does he have, I don't know. Maybe he does have 4 official visits. I forget if he has 3 or 4. Penn State's done a good job recruiting him. Until Penn State pulls a kid from Glenville that Ohio State really wants, I can't get excited about it. It's the St. Francis effect. It's
the
St. Peter's Bergen. Like, until that happens, I'm just next.
Yep. All right. Well, next is the Elite 11, which happens on Sunday in State College. We're going to preview all of that here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. These are the highlights from last year. A lot of interesting things that we learned. Watched Andrew Olish up close and personal for the first time. Got to see some of Penn State's prospects and commits. Lyric Samuel was there last year. So it's not just about the quarterbacks, but it's a lot about the quarterbacks, because there's going to be 2 of them that Penn State has in its class of 2026 that will be at that event. And so I want to get your perspective on what you're looking for. We're all going to be there. I'll be providing you highlights as best I can of everything that goes on. There's so much stuff going on, though. So I want to get your perspective, Fitz, on which one of these quarterbacks. They're both interesting, I guess. Which one of them do you think we'll learn the most about, and which one has the most to gain from this experience?
Oh, that's tough. Most to gain is probably Peyton Falzone, just looking at what he brings to the table as a physical specimen. But he's going to be up against other quarterbacks that, you know, are a little bit more refined in terms of passing. So, and this is a passing event. You look at what he does the best, and it is be an athlete on the football field, a moose in pads, if you will. And he's not going to have, there's not going to be a drill where he takes off and runs 55 yards. It's going to be a passing expose, and we will see if his work with Brad Mandler has helped him out there. Now he's incredibly physically talented, got a huge arm, but the precision and everything is kind of what matters in this situation. And don't like to draw too much from it, but you can see a lot in terms of the competition, in terms of how he's going to respond to other guys throwing. Like, that is one big thing that we noticed last year when we were watching a pretty good group of quarterbacks that were there, that the internal competition between these guys that are, you know, peers in the same class, it brings out the best in some, and some kind of crack under that pressure. So very curious, because I would assume, not having seen the list of groupings, that Troy Hune and Peyton Falzone will be in the same grouping together, the 1A group of 2026 prospects. So I'm excited to see both of them. Hune has always been very good in this setting. He earned an invite to the Under Armour All-American game based on his work at the Under Armour camp out in LA, I believe it was. So you've got an opportunity for him to continue that. And I think he's going to do really well. Mm-hmm. Now, we talk about him slipping in the rankings or whatever with the hand quotes, and that's a lot of padded stuff. That is a lot of what he does on Friday nights, Saturday nights, whenever he plays. So I think that is a question that we will not get an answer to this weekend, but I do expect Hune to throw the ball really well this weekend.
Yeah, Ryan, what do you think of the situation? I also find it interesting. Neither of these guys are taking their official visits this weekend, and for Hune, that means another trip here to State College in, I don't know, June, May, whenever it is. Where he's May 30th.
Penn State wouldn't want them. Penn State wants them to come this weekend. They want them to come that weekend, May 30th, and then they want them to do a couple weeks after that for the whiteout camp at the end of the month. But I'm just excited to see them both up close. Like, we've seen Peyton Falzone enough now. Like, I understand that. For me, it's more so Troy, with him being out in California and just some of the limited information that we have on him. Now, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, did they run do they run and
they test them?
test at this
game?
game?
They test.
So trying to learn a little bit on that would be good. Not that I expect Troy to, blow the world away or anything like that, but we just know how good of an athlete Peyton Falzone is. I'd be just curious to learn a little bit about Troy as well.
Yeah. I think to me, the interesting thing is going to be watching these guys in some of the drills that aren't just drop back and throw. So both of these guys in context from what I've seen from them on film. Troy Hune is in an offense that runs so many RPOs. What does he look like when he's just dropping back and throwing? I think there's a certain aspect of the conversation around Troy Hune and his involvement in the wins and losses and his production where not every throw is going to be an RPO throw at the next level. And not that they all are in his offense, but there's very much a emphasis on running the ball on his offense and then playing off of that. And again, these aren't criticisms of the offensive coordinators. These are just what these teams are trying to do to win and play to the best of their talent. Peyton Falzone, on the other side, obviously there is there's the throwing aspect of his new mechanics, but also one of the things that I think he struggles with the most is throwing on the run because he tends to try and jump. And I don't necessarily know why he does that. So how does he throw in context of that? And how does he throw on some of those intermediate routes? Because his offense, it was a lot of maybe dink and dunk and spread offense, throw something short, and then bombs away. If they get a one-on-one, they have receivers running routes down the field all the time. And I know his particular completion percentage and his throwing motion has been a big part of the conversation this offseason. It's also the fact that he's selecting a lot of these deep shots. So what does the bulk of him throwing not deep balls look like? I'm interested in all of those contexts from these two guys to see how they look like in conditions that are set up for them to be challenged, but also they're going to go through everything. We're going to see all of the throws from them. And I think that's as valuable as, watching the competition or just what's their completion percentage like. Couple minutes here left. I don't know. I know, Ryan, I want to dig a little bit more into this. You mentioned LeVar Keys and Jasir Rogers are going to be here this weekend. So the All-22 camp on top of that is a great opportunity to see and get testing numbers on some of these guys as well. So what do you think of the opportunity for Penn State to have these guys in their backyard again as well?
They've been as consistent as they can get, right? Like it's not, I'm not, if that's what you're asking, like getting them back on campus and all those things.
No.
Okay.
No. Just generally like to get testing numbers on them and to have them be part
we already know that we already got all those testing numbers.
I want to see Rogers and Keys race because they were both in the 4.3s last year at camp. So that'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, we know what they can run. I'm not worried about it. Yeah. Hey, one thing I will say to you, like Christian was asking a question, can you go and watch the Elite 11? I don't think they'll let you in to sit in the stands, but it's at Memorial Field, right? Like you can just go up to the fence and watch it.
You can be outside. I don't know if they let people into the actual stands, but
just parents.
Parents, and if you're registered for the camp, but you can stand up there and watch it around it. I mean, it's interesting to some. I mean, it's
a long day.
Yeah. Christian, I'll give you my credential if you want. No, I'm just kidding. I'm coming up. But I mean, I would go check it out. Right. It starts at 9. Like, so it'll be a lot of other positions early. Like if you want to come up and watch Troy Hune and Peyton Falzone throw, what would be 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock be a good time to come out? Would you say? As far as like, that's kind of, it's kind of when it's winding. Like that's when we're doing one-on-ones and it's the best on the best. And if that's something you're interested in, I would say 2 o'clock-ish would probably be a good time. You guys were there last year. I was there before it moved to the new field. So
time has no meaning because it's infinite. Like it starts at 9:30, it goes to 3, and it's like you're locked in the entire time. So I don't know when times of things happen, but it was later in the day, 1 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
11:30 is when they start the passing drills where they're all going. There's 100 quarterbacks throwing all at the same time. But they narrowing it down to some of those, as you mentioned, one-on-ones is later in the day for sure.
And then we had one other thing on the rundown, from the mailbag, D. Frank. How many recruits do you think they will end up this year? Someone's asking, can they end up with 30? Let's just do the math, right? So we're at 17 now. I think 3 more O-linemen, fair. I think Sean would agree with that. 2 more defensive ends. I would think that just because of the talent in the region, you have Daniel Jennings already. 2 more is probably a safer bet. Maybe it could be more. We'll see. Obviously, if they got Luke Wafle and Jackson Ford and you got Carter Meadows out there, of course, they're taking 3. So we'll say at least 2 to 3 there. So that would put you about 22, 23. Ty Howell has done hard enough work recruiting 3 quality tight ends that I think there's a good chance he's going to get one of them. So we'll say 23, 24. And then Terry Smith has to get some corners. So 24, 25, you add in one of those two athletic guys that, Joey O'Brien, for example, who, we're talking about him as a safety, but let's not forget Penn State has really pushed in the chips on him being able to play wherever the heck he wants to play. So keep that in mind. You got a couple of those talented players that, they're not going to pass up no matter what the numbers are.
Yeah.
All along what we're saying, I think 27 is realistic. I think 30 is probably a bit of a stretch. But I think 10 more players in this class, I think you get to 24, 25, and then you just kind of push your chips in like they did on an Andrew Olish last year or some other guys, whatever you got left, and you add a few more late.
If they got to 30, it would be some situation where maybe in September or October, something fell into their lap where they couldn't turn it down, more so than they'll end up with 30 in the summer.
And there's more flexibility, and there's more flexibility there, even though the House settlement has not been approved, that you're looking more at 105 than 85 anymore. And, they've essentially been above 85 anyway, but there's creative math can make that work where you're still within the parameters of what is out there. So you don't really clench as much, if that makes sense, whenever you're talking about taking extra guys. And you gotta strike while the iron's hot. I mean, D end is great in the region. I mean, elite in the region compared to every other year. D tackle is still, there's still a bunch of guys like Carter Gooden got bumped to number 70 overall in 24/7 yesterday. And he's a guy that we talk about is not in the top tier of defensive tackles. Like there's
I thought that was a little high.
Like you'll take that kid. Yeah. And then Pennsylvania. Penn State does extend itself for Pennsylvania kids. It is what it is there. So
like a Davion Branch, if he decided late he wanted to do something
like a Branch, like an Ashton Blatt at Central Catholic, you've got opportunities for guys that maybe aren't no-brainers to still be a part of this class. So I think that you look at the math and it's not your typical we got to cap it at 25 because we got to worry about the numbers in the class of 2027. I don't think it's there anymore. So you've got an opportunity to do that. And plus with the ins and the outs, that's kind of what the math that you're working with anymore. So it's very, very different than it was 5-10 years ago.
That'll do it today for the BWI Live Show and for the rest of the week, but we're not done here on the YouTube channel. Of course, we're going to have highlights from the week, and we're going to have what happens this weekend at Elite 11. If Penn State gets a commitment, don't know if we're going to be getting to it on Sunday. Just to be honest with you, probably not. So if that happens, and dear God, I hope they announce it on Monday, maybe look for the video then. But we absolutely will be covering all of this stuff and the fallout and the impact of this first official visit weekend. This is the first of many here from May and then June. So make sure you subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel and to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com to stay up to date with all of the fast-paced and changing world. I don't keep up with it. Honestly, I can't keep up with all the information. I learn things here on the show by asking them questions that are on, what we talk about. Like I ask about one of the things I didn't ask, and I was trying to ask earlier, and I just had to abort, was, hey, Ryan, who else is coming? Because I don't know about that yet at Elite 11 of the other players. I don't know if you know that yet.
I'm working on it now. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm working on it.
We're all learning together here.
We'll get it there. We'll get it there. Yeah.
Hey, T. Frank, can I jump here? Class of 2022. Well, this is since the COVID class that had 17 guys in it in 2021. 2022 had 25 prospects or 25 commits. 2023 had 24. 2024 had 26. This is much tougher than I anticipated. And 2025 had 27. So you're not looking at 25 a class anymore. You're looking at, how can you expand those numbers? And I think Penn State will continue to do that.
And that is exactly how I put up the class of 2025, talking about Davion Brown on the title for the video yesterday, because we're in 2025. Why wouldn't it be 25? Anyway, we'll be back later with more Penn State football recruiting here on the BWI YouTube channel and BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We'll talk to you then.